The Arizona sun was a hammer, and the desert floor was an anvil, and Jackson Hayes was caught right in between. For 45 years he'd been running, from the army, from the law, but mostly from himself. Now it looked like his race was finally over. His shirt was soaked in blood from a shoulder wound that wouldn't stop weeping. His horse, a tough little mare named Girl, was breathing in ragged, broken gas. The cavalry was behind him. He could smell their dust on the wind. But Jackson knew deep in his gut that the desert would kill him long before a bullet ever could. He saw the rocks shimmer in the heat, a promise of shade, maybe even water. "Just a little further, Girl," he rasped, his own voice a stranger to his ears. Then he heard it, the thunder of hooves. Not two or three, a dozen. They were closing in. He spurred the mare on, pain lancing through his shoulder like a hot knife. The rocks grew closer, a fortress of stone carved by 1,000 years of wind and flood. He ducked into a narrow canyon, the walls rising up to swallow him whole. He almost collapsed as his boots hit the ground. The world spun, a dizzying carousel of rock and sky. But he saw the trickle of water from the canyon wall, a tiny spring that fed a small, clear pool. He let the horse drink, then slumped against the cool stone, his body screaming for rest. He heard the cavalry ride past the canyon mouth, their voices fading into the distance. He was safe, for now. He tore a strip from his ruined shirt to rebandage his shoulder, and that's when his eyes caught the mark on his forearm, a faded blue tattoo of a snake coiled around a dagger. The mark of the 7th Special Scouts, an elite unit, trackers, killers, the men they called the Butchers of Bear Creek. He traced the hated symbol with a trembling finger. The memory hit him like a fist. The screams, the fire, the smell of burning homes and burning flesh. He'd tried to stop it. He'd turned his gun on his own men. They'd called him a traitor. He called himself much worse. The heat, the blood loss, the ghosts of the past. It was too much. As he slipped into darkness, he heard whispers, words he shouldn't understand. Apache words, ancient words. His last thought was that he was finally, truly going mad. He woke to the taste of bitter tea and the sight of an old woman's face. She was Apache, her silver hair braided with beads, her eyes dark and deep as a desert night. They looked right through him, seeing every sin he'd ever committed. "Drink," she said. Her voice was like stone smoothed by a river. He drank. The tea was strange, herbal, but it cleared his head. He tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in his shoulder forced him back down. "I am Talasi," the old woman said. "You are in my care." That's when he saw the other one, a younger woman standing at the mouth of the cave. She was beautiful in a way that was dangerous, like a coiled snake. Her eyes were full of hate. "My granddaughter, Ayana," Talasi said. Ayana moved with the silence of a predator. She strode over and grabbed his arm, her fingers like iron. She twisted it, showing the faded tattoo to her grandmother. "He is one of them," she spat, the words dripping with venom. "The Butchers of Bear Creek." Jackson flinched, not from the pain in his shoulder, but from the truth in her words. "My husband," Ayana hissed, her face close to his. "My son. Gone. Because of men like you." "Enough." Talasi's voice was soft, but it held the authority of a mountain. "Blood calls to blood. He is part of us." "Part of them?" What did she mean? Before he could ask, a twig snapped outside the cave. In an instant, Ayana was at the entrance, a knife appearing in her hand as if from nowhere. Talasi leaned close to Jackson, her breath warm against his ear. "Riders," she whispered, "not your soldiers. Worse." His instincts took over. He grabbed his gun belt, his hand closing around the familiar weight of his revolver. He moved to the cave entrance, his body screaming in protest. Ayana shot him a look of pure scorn, but she didn't stop him. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the rocks in shades of blood and fire. He saw a flicker of movement, a glint of metal. Without thinking, he stepped out and fired. A man cried out in the darkness, but a second shot answered his, bullets screaming off the rocks around him. He dove for cover, pain exploding in his shoulder. Then Ayana was beside him, a bow in her hands. She loosed an arrow with a grace that was both beautiful and deadly. Another scream echoed through the canyon. "Behind you!" Tassi's warning came from the cave. Jackson spun, his revolver coming up just as a third man lunged from the shadows, a knife held high. And then the strangest thing happened. Words ripped from his throat. Apache words. A war cry he had no business knowing. A war cry that felt as natural as his own name. His bullet found its mark. The man crumpled to the ground. Silence. Jackson stood, breathing heavily, turning to find both women staring at him. Their faces were masks of pure shock. How? Ayanna started, but she couldn't finish. I don't know, Jackson said, just as bewildered. I don't know how I knew those words. Talasi stepped forward, her ancient eyes fixed on his. The blood remembers, she said softly, even when the mind forgets. She reached out and touched his cheek. Your mother was Apache, she said. My cousin's daughter. The world stopped. It wasn't possible. His mother, she'd never said a word. She'd hidden her past, buried it so deep he never even knew it existed. Suddenly, everything made sense. The pull he'd always felt toward this land. The dreams in a language he didn't know. The feeling of being a man caught between two worlds belonging to neither. Why didn't she tell me? The question was a raw wound. To keep you safe, Talasi said simply. In your world, mixed blood is a dangerous thing to carry. Ayanna still held her bow, her expression a battle between hatred and confusion. This changes nothing, she said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. He still rode with the butchers. And left them when he saw the truth, Talasi countered. The spirits have guided him to us for a reason. Before Ayanna could argue, the sound of more horses echoed from the distance. We must move, Tasi said, her voice urgent. Now! Jackson holstered his gun, his mind still reeling. His horse was too weak. They were trapped. We have two horses hidden, Ayanna said reluctantly. If you can ride. He nodded, though his vision was starting to blur at the edges again. As they prepared to leave, Talasi gripped his arm. You were meant to find us, Jackson Hayes, she said, her eyes burning with a strange fire. The blood calls to blood, and now you must help us reach the Valley of Souls. The journey to the Valley of Souls was a fever dream. They rode through the night, Jackson sharing a horse with Talasi, the old woman a steady presence at his back. Ayanna rode ahead, a silent, watchful guide. His mind was a storm of questions. His mother, his heritage, the massacre at Bear Creek. It was all a tangled knot of secrets and lies. How did you know me? He asked Talasi, his voice low. I have dreamed of you, she replied. The spirits showed me a man of two worlds, a man who would come when we needed him most. I'm no savior, he said bitterly. I couldn't even save them at Bear Creek. Yet you tried, she said, her words a balm on his raw soul. When others killed, you stood apart. That is why you are here now. The spirits offer a chance to balance what was broken. Ayanna raised a hand and they halted. She slipped from her horse and disappeared over a ridge. When she returned, her face was grim. Riders, she said. 6 of them, following our trail. Jackson's training kicked in. We need a defensible position, or we need to lose them. There is a place, Talasi said. A box canyon, an old hunting camp. The entrance is narrow, but there is a secret way out, through the high rocks. It was their only chance. They pushed their horses hard, the moon a sliver of bone in the dark sky. The canyon was just as Talasi had described, a natural fortress. Inside, a small spring fed a pool of water. Ancient paintings covered the walls. Ayanna made a smokeless fire while Jackson saw to the horses. His shoulder was a constant, throbbing agony. Sit, Talasi commanded when he was finished. She unwrapped his bandages. The wound was angry, inflamed. You carry many wounds, she said, cleaning it with spring water and applying a poultice of crushed herbs. Not all of them are visible. He watched Ayanna across the fire. Your granddaughter hates me. Ayanna has lost much, Talasi replied. Her husband and son were killed at Bear Creek. Only her brother survived. Her eyes clouded with sorrow. Or so we thought. Her brother? Nahali, we believed him dead. But I have seen him in a vision. He lives. But his spirit is twisted with pain. He guides the men who hunt us now. The words hit Jackson like a physical blow. Her own brother was betraying them. He serves a man named Callahan, Talasi continued. The name was a ghost from Jackson's past, Major William Callahan, his former commander, the man who had given the order to open fire at Bear Creek. Callahan, Jackson breathed. What does he want with you? He believes we journey to find gold, Talasi said with a grim smile. What we seek to protect is far more valuable. Ayanna approached them, her face a mask. We should post a watch. I'll take first, Jackson offered, but Ayanna stopped him. You can barely stand. I will watch. Her tone was final. After she had gone, Talasi turned to him, her eyes glowing in the firelight. Now you must know why we journey to the Valley of Souls, she told him then. About the memory keepers, about the sacred ceremony that happened only once every 50 years, where the history and wisdom of their people were passed from one generation to the next. I am the current keeper, Talasi said. Ayanna is to be the next. She explained that the ceremony had to happen during the blood moon, now just days away. If they failed, the soul of their people, 1,000 years of history, would be lost forever. Callahan thinks you're after treasure, Jackson pieced it together. Yes, he uses Nahali to guide him, promising him a place in the white man's world. My grandson does not understand. He will be discarded once his usefulness ends. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture of greed, betrayal, and a desperate race against time. Why tell me all this? Jackson asked. Why trust me? Because the blood that flows in your veins is the same that flows in ours, Talasi said, her hand resting on his arm. Because the spirits have shown me that you are the shield that will protect the flame. And because, Jackson Hayes, you have been searching for your place in this world for too long, perhaps it is time you found it. She closed her eyes then and seemed to fall instantly asleep. Jackson sat by the dying fire, his mind a battlefield. Part of him, the cynical drifter, screamed at him to run. This wasn't his fight, but another part, a part he thought had died at Bear Creek, felt the stirrings of purpose. Callahan, the man who had turned him into a monster. This was a chance to face him, a chance to find some kind of redemption. He looked at Ayanna's silhouette at the mouth of the canyon, a woman who had lost everything, yet still fought to preserve her heritage. A woman who had every right to kill him, but had bandaged his wounds instead. Perhaps Talasi was right. Perhaps it was time to stop running. Dawn broke, cold and gray. Jackson's shoulder was a knot of fire, but his mind was clear. He found Ayanna by the spring. Your grandmother told me everything, he said. And now you wish to leave, she stated, her back to him. Actually, he said, I'm offering to help. She turned, her eyes searching his for any sign of a lie. Why? Because Callahan needs to be stopped, he said simply, and because I'm tired of running from who I am. Something in her expression softened. Purpose gives strength when all else fails, she acknowledged. But can you still shoot with that shoulder? He drew his revolver, aimed at a pine cone on a distant ledge, and fired. The pine cone exploded. A ghost of a smile touched Ayanna's lips. It will do. As they prepared to leave, Talasi approached him. She handed him a small leather pouch on a cord. Protection, she said, a reminder of who you are becoming. He slipped it over his head. It rested against the silver medallion his mother had given him, the only thing he had left of her. Talasi touched the medallion. Your mother's, she said. She turned it over, revealing a strange symbol etched into the back, a series of interconnected lines like a constellation. Her eyes widened. This is the mark of our family line, she whispered. The Bear clan. She wanted you to know. All these years he had carried his heritage around his neck and never known it. We should move, Ayanna interrupted, her voice tight. The hunters will not be far behind. As they rode out of the canyon, a strange feeling settled over Jackson. It wasn't the familiar dread of a man on the run. It was hope. They rode through a blackened wasteland of jagged lava fields, a place that felt like the devil's own backyard. The heat was a physical thing, pressing down on them, stealing their breath. Tell me about your mother, Talasi said, her voice a steady anchor in the shimmering heat. He found himself talking, the memories coming unbidden, her strength, her kindness, her secret songs, sung in a language he now knew was Apache. The lullabies of our clan, Talasi confirmed. They tell how the Great Bear taught our ancestors to heal. He had been surrounded by his heritage his entire life and had been blind to it. Why did she leave? He asked. She fell in love with a white settler, Talasi said, her voice soft with old sorrow. Her family disowned her. I was the only one who kept contact, in secret. They rode on, the story unfolding. He learned of Talasi's long search for him after his mother's death, of his own enlistment in the very army that was destroying his people. I served with the 7th Scouts for 3 years, he confessed, the words tasting like poison. I was good at it, too good. I never questioned why we were always sent after peaceful settlements. He told them about Bear Creek, the lie they were fed, the massacre. When I realized the truth, he said, his voice raw, I tried to stop it. I turned my gun on Callahan. He shot me in the leg. By the time I could move, it was over. But not for everyone, Talasi said quietly. Some escaped because of you. He shook his head. Not enough. My son was one who escaped, Talasi revealed, with Ayana's boy. He told us of a white soldier who fought his own kind to protect our people. The world tilted. He had saved them. The husband and son Ayana had lost. No. Wait. My son died later, of his wounds, Talasi clarified. But he made sure Ayana and her son got away. The relief and guilt were a bitter mix. He had saved her son, but not her husband. And now the boy was gone too. Ayana had stopped at a fork in the trail, her face unreadable. They had a choice. The high path, fast but exposed, or the canyon, slower but with more cover. He looked at Talasi, saw the fatigue she tried to hide. The high path, he decided. We need to move fast. Ayana nodded. Agreed. It was the first time they had agreed on anything. A small thing, but it felt like a shift in the wind. They reached a high ridge as the sun began to set. From there they could see for miles, and Jackson saw it, a faint cloud of dust on the horizon. Company, he said, his voice grim. Moving fast. Callahan, Ayana confirmed, her expression hardening. He will not stop, Talasi said. Not until he has what he seeks, or until he is stopped. The implication was clear. They couldn't outrun him forever. Eventually, they would have to make a stand. The final days of the journey were a desperate race. They rode hard, the dust cloud of Callahan's men a constant presence on the horizon. They were an omen, a promise of the violence to come. They entered the Badlands, a labyrinth of eroded gullies and knife-edged ridges. It was a place where the earth itself seemed to have gone mad. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, Talasi began to sing, a traveling song of the Bear Clan, and Jackson found himself humming along, the melody a ghost on his lips, a memory stirring in his blood. They were in the maze now, a series of slot canyons that twisted back on themselves. It was a place you could get lost in forever. But Talasi knew the way. She pointed out the secret signs left by the ancestors, symbols carved into the rock, visible only to those who knew to look. In one hidden chamber, they found ancient paintings, the origin story of the Bear Clan, a great bear figure surrounded by dancing figures. Our clan, Jackson whispered, the words coming from a place deeper than memory. Yes, Talasi smiled, your blood recognizes its lineage. Then they heard it, the echo of voices, English. Callahan's men had entered the maze. Nahali, Talasi said, her voice grim. He knows some of the old ways, enough to follow us here. The maze was no longer a sanctuary, it was a trap. There is a hidden path, Talasi said, pointing to a crack in the canyon wall so narrow it was almost invisible. Known only to the memory keepers, it leads to the Valley of Souls, but the horses cannot follow. They had no choice. They sent the horses galloping down the main passage, a diversion to draw their pursuers, and slipped into the fissure. The passage was tight, claustrophobic. It plunged them into absolute darkness. They moved by touch, by the sound of Talasi's steady footsteps ahead of them. Then a faint glow appeared. The rock walls themselves were luminous, casting an ethereal blue-green light. They had entered a hidden chamber, a sanctuary where a sacred spring bubbled from the ground. We are beneath the Valley of Souls, Talasi announced. The ceremony must be performed tomorrow night, under the blood moon. As they rested in the glowing cave, a new kind of intimacy settled between them. The warrior, the elder, and the half-blood. A strange, unlikely family forged in desperation. "Are you afraid?" Jackson asked Iana quietly. "Of the ceremony?" "Yes," she admitted, her voice soft in the strange light. "But not of the pain. I fear failing my people. I was not the intended heir. My brother was." "Talasi chose you," Jackson reminded her. "She had no one else," Ayana said simply. "I am the last of our direct line." The words hung in the air, a stark reminder of the stakes. This wasn't just about their survival. It was about the survival of an entire culture. They emerged from the hidden passage into the Valley of Souls. It was a place out of time. Towering stone sentinels stood guard over a silent, sacred landscape. The air itself seemed to vibrate with a hidden power. Jackson felt it in his bones. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had come home. They made camp in a secluded grotto. That night, under a canopy of stars more brilliant than any he had ever seen, Talasi told him the final secret of the Memory Keepers. "The passing of the knowledge is not just a transfer of facts," she explained. "It is the sharing of a soul. The current keeper must make room for the new one. It is a kind of death." She was sacrificing herself, her life, her very identity, for the future of her people. Later that night, Jackson saw it, a glint of metal on a high ridge, a lone observer watching them. It was Nahali. At dawn, Jackson met him. The man was a ghost of his former self, his face a roadmap of torture and regret. He had not led Callahan to them, not yet. He was torn, a man caught between two worlds, just like Jackson. "I will not lead them here today," Nahal promised. "Beyond that, I must think." He turned to leave, then paused. "Tell my grandmother," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "Tell her I remember the songs." Jackson returned to the cave. He gave Talasi the message. The old woman's eyes filled with tears. "If he remembers the songs," she whispered, "not all is lost." But Callahan was coming. The blood moon was rising. The ceremony could not wait. "You must guard the entrance," Talasi told Jackson. "During the deepest part of the ritual, neither of us can defend ourselves." She then pressed a carved stone pendant into his hand. "The key to our people's history," she said. "Memorize it. The knowledge in your blood will help you understand." The trust she placed in him was a heavy, precious thing. As the sun set, the ceremony began. The women's voices rose in an ancient, powerful chant. The air in the cave grew thick with energy. Outside, the eastern horizon began to glow. The blood moon was rising. And then he heard it, a single footstep on loose stone. Nahal was back, but he was not alone. "They come," Nahal called out, his voice a warning in the twilight. "Callahan and 4 men." He had made his choice. "I stand with my people." They had a chance. 2 warriors against 5. The odds were still terrible, but they were no longer impossible. The valley, bathed in the crimson light of the blood moon, became a battlefield. Jackson and Nahale moved like shadows, using the terrain, using the fear of their enemies as a weapon. It was Apache warfare, brutal and efficient. One by one, Callahan's men fell. Then from the cave, a cry. Ayana's voice, raw with pain. The ceremony was reaching its climax. Callahan heard it too. "The treasure!" he screamed, his greed overriding all caution. He broke cover and sprinted for the cave. Jackson and Nahal ran to intercept him, but it was too late. Callahan burst into the sacred space, his revolver drawn. He found the 2 women kneeling on the stone platform, locked in their trance. "Where is it?" he shrieked, his voice cracking with madness. "Where is the gold?" Jackson and Nahal burst in behind him. "There is no gold, Callahan," Jackson said, his voice deadly calm. Callahan aimed his pistol at Talasi's head. "Tell me, or the old woman dies." Jackson lunged, throwing himself in front of Talasi. In the same instant, Nahal threw himself at Callahan. The first shot went wild, ricocheting off the cave ceiling. The second shot found its mark. Jackson felt no pain. He looked down, expecting to see his own blood. But it was Nahal who staggered, a dark stain spreading across his chest. He had taken the bullet meant for Jackson. With his last ounce of strength, Nahal tackled Callahan, grappling him to the ground. Jackson was on them in a flash, wrenching the gun from Callahan's hand. A single brutal blow ending the fight. Nahal lay on the cave floor, his life bleeding out onto the sacred stone. "Brother," he whispered, his eyes finding Jackson's. "Protect them. Complete the circle." Ayanna was at his side, her face a mask of grief. "Sister," he gasped. "Forgive me." "I forgive you," she wept, taking his hand. "You have returned to us." A strange peace settled on Nahal's face. "Grandmother," he whispered, "I remembered the songs." "I know, grandson," Talasi said, her voice filled with a profound love. "Your ancestors welcome you." As Nahal drew his last breath, the air in the cave shimmered. Shadows moved on the walls, shapes like human figures, gathering to welcome a fallen warrior home. The ceremony had to be completed. Talasi and Ayanna returned to the platform, their voices rising once more in the ancient chant. Jackson tied the unconscious Callahan and stood guard at the cave entrance. He was the shield, the guardian. The blood moon began to set. The chanting in the cave reached a crescendo, then fell silent. He went back inside. Talasi lay by the platform, her small body still, her face peaceful. Her sacrifice was complete. Ayanna knelt nearby, her eyes wide with the wisdom of 1,000 years. She was the new memory keeper. "I see so much," she whispered, her hands trembling as she reached for him. "Help me find balance." He took her hands, his touch an anchor in the storm of memories that now raged within her. The circle was complete. The half-blood warrior who had found his past, and the memory keeper who now held the future of her people. They had both lost so much. But in the heart of that sacred valley, they had found something more. A purpose, a home, each other. This journey of blood and spirit changed not just one man, but the future of a people. Jackson Hayes, who began as a man running from his past, became the guardian of a legacy he never knew was his. What do you think? Can a person truly find redemption? Or are we forever defined by the worst things we've done? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of sacrifice and the search for identity resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us keep these powerful stories of the Old West alive. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next trail.